Hi, Dad. Thanks for joining.
Hi, Simon.
Yeah, well, this is a little makeshift Father's Day gift for you. I figured you could do the intro, actually, for this episode, since it's a Father's Day episode.
A Father's Day gift of being on For the Love of Sport. I can't think of a better gift for me. Thanks, Simon. I hope you have a great show today.
There we go, Mr. Bruce Mack. Thank you for introing us into this wonderful episode of For the Love of Sport. Welcome back, everybody.
Welcome back, dear listener. And yeah, that was pretty cool, Simon, getting to see the other side of our dear host, Simon McKenzie. So that was fun to have him on. And obviously, we're celebrating Father's Day with this episode. It's this Sunday. It's coming out. We had your dad on. Shout out to my dad, who probably wouldn't have agreed to do the intro. So very cool that your dad did that. But we still got to give him a shout out.
I surprised him. I sent him a link. I was like, hey, can you join this quick? And I just kind of pretended that I was having an issue with something. And then he joined and I was like, by the way, this is your Father's Day gift. So thank you.
You're welcome. No, but seriously, that's super cool.
Yeah. And while we're on the topic too, before we hop into, our guest here, big shout out to all parents, all guardians out there, the life lessons and things that you learn as you grow up. It's all wonderful when it all comes from love. So big shout out to everybody out there.
No matter the form or who you've got in your life, your family, your chosen family, whoever that is, celebrating everyone today. Love that. But we've got a packed little episode today. So I think the lovely little banter here can get cut short, and maybe we just hop right into our interview. What do you say?
I think so. Let's get right to it. We are beyond thrilled to welcome not one, but two exceptional talents in the world of NASCAR, Jeff and Harrison Burton. First, we're going to put the spotlight on Jeff Burton, affectionately known across the NASCAR community as the Mayor. What a fantastic nickname, by the way. With his charismatic presence, Jeff has been a beacon of knowledge both on and off the track. Throughout his career, he's driven with extraordinary tenacity, skill, and amassing an impressive 21 Cup Series victories. Post his racing career, Jeff transitioned into broadcasting booth, lending his expertise to the NBC's coverage of NASCAR, and has become a wise guide in taking viewers through the thrilling twists and turns of every race. Our second guest today is his son, Harrison, and a rising star himself in the next generation of NASCAR. He has his own successes on the track and has stepped into the high-stakes world of NASCAR, holding his own in a field of veterans as 2017 NASCAR K&N Pro Series East champion and 2020 NASCAR Xfinity Series Rookie of the Year. We're looking forward to diving in more and learning more about the two of you. And Maria and I are admittedly newer to the world of racing and NASCAR, especially from a youth sports perspective. But with that, Jeff, Harrison, welcome to the For the Love of Sport podcast.
Yeah, great for having us. Thank you.
Yeah, welcome.
We're excited.
We are too. We've got the adrenaline going. I can only imagine this is exactly how you feel behind a car. Got to be very comfortable.
Absolutely.
We like to jump in really with the great connector, which is youth sports, because most people have fond memories of playing when they're young. That's so foundational, just being a kid and growing up. And I think just Jeff, starting with you, can you talk about your own youth sports experience and how you kind of got involved in racing and what that looks like, and then likewise, Harrison, if you want to follow up after that.
Yeah, I had a great youth in sports. I was the son of a very athletic father. Very competitive man, still today, mid-'80s competitive. And we did everything. We played basketball, we played football, we played baseball, we played soccer, we raced go-karts. We did it all. And we went from one season to the next. And I actually loved that. I remember my fondest memories of school were in gym. It's probably a lot of people feel that way. But I really enjoyed the opportunity to play all different kinds of sports and to be exposed to a lot of different thought processes, different coaches, different rules, different strategies. I was not a great athlete by any means, but I did learn at an early age to hustle. I wasn't a good enough athlete, so I needed to try to run faster or harder or longer than the next guy and try to out hustle them. So to me, that youth experience was great. And also have, my parents were very supportive. My brothers were very supportive. They, come to games. I'd go to my brother's games. And I think that was great for us too, because I always knew my family had my back. And so it wasn't just learning about how to kick a soccer ball. It was learning how to work with others and compete against others, learn how to lose, learn how to win. I think sports do that in a way that very few other things can.
100%. I know we've talked about that, you and I, Marie, about how sports is one of the few venues where you get to experience losing in a safe environment and learn it. And you learn so much from just those experiences. I guess, how did the transition to, you mentioned racing go-karts. I did catch that. So basketball and all the other sports too. So at what point were you driving a go-kart going, this is what I'm going to do now? How did that transition happen?
Yeah. So my dad, as I said, he was a very competitive person, and he heard there was a go-kart race in our local town. And so he took my oldest brother, Ward, who also was a cup driver. He took him up there in like a cart that you would have in the yard. You know what I mean? He's like, he can beat anybody, right? And got up there, and my dad always loved speed, and Ward did pretty well, I guess, in this cart. And next thing you know, we're all racing go-karts and traveling all over the state of Virginia. My dad actually raced go-karts as well. I wasn't old enough yet. Then you had to be 7 years old to drive. And so the minute I turned 7, I started racing. But there were times we had an old Suburban, and we put 2 go-karts in the back of it, one on top of the other. And for me to go, I'd have to ride in one of the go-karts in the back. And, but I wanted to do what my brothers were doing. I wanted to do what my dad was doing. They were my heroes, and what they were doing, I wanted to do. And I certainly felt like early on that I could be better at that than stick and ball sports. Although I had to work at it, I felt like I was better at that. I had more of an opportunity to be successful in that than I could playing soccer, baseball, and definitely baseball was ugly.
No, Harrison, were you better at baseball, do you think, or did you have a similar experience?
Tried. So my problem is I have the same genes as my dad does. Not the most athletic guy in the world, but so baseball wasn't in my cards either. That's for sure.
What about you, Harrison, though, from other sports? Were you, because of your family's background, more inclined to just dive right into racing, or were you dabbling around in some other sports too?
Yeah, I messed around some other stuff for sure. It seems odd. I really wanted to play football, but my mom thought it was too dangerous, which is a strange thing to say as a professional race car driver.
The irony.
Yeah, so I really wanted to play football, and she wouldn't let me. And so I told her I could, try lacrosse instead. And she didn't know that the rules of lacrosse are also pretty physical.
Yeah.
And so I kind of snuck that one through. And the first play, I remember, I started fairly young in lacrosse. I had been racing since I was 5. I started racing at a really young age. Lacrosse came a little later, but I remember my first game was a little indoor league in lacrosse, and I got hit so hard, my helmet flew across the field, and I fell on the ground. And I remember getting up and just seeing my mom looking so mad that I had kind of snuck this through. So yeah, I played lacrosse growing up quite a bit. And then as racing got more serious, which it did for me, I feel like racing got pretty serious by the time I was 14, 15. It was kind of already what I wanted to do for a living. It was kind of my full-time job at that point. I went to normal high school still, but it's when it became kind of serious. So I had to drop the lacrosse side of things and go into racing. But the racing side of things is really neat as a kid growing up. It's a lot more just like any other sport than you would expect. I grew up racing a race car called a quarter midget. And there was, all these kids that would race these carts. It's a lot like a go-kart, just has a roll cage. Another thing that my mom wanted because she don't want me to fly out of the go-kart. So she's very she's safety inclined, if you don't notice, right? But she wanted me to be in a safer cart, so I did that. But it went from you would go race your buddies, and if right after the race you would go ride around on bikes or go play football or go whatever. So it turned into kind of a bunch of friends, and I still have friends that I met when I was 5 years old, quarter midget racing. So yeah, it's really similar to the kind of sports experience. And I was pretty glad I grew up the way I did doing that. It was a lot of fun.
I think that's an area that we certainly like I think our experience is certainly like just big, long fields and, orange slices and Capri Sun, but I imagine they still have orange slices of Capri Sun on the track. So that's not necessarily just for soccer or basketball or whatever it is. But I think that's something that, we wanted to dive in deeper of just what that I guess how thing works, where you're just like, you're going from playing lacrosse once and then you're diving into go-karts and quarter midgets the next. And I guess my question is, how does it scale up from there? Is it just slowly introducing you to just more and more horsepower and more expensive vehicles?
Yeah, for sure. For me, it was probably quicker than my dad can kind of talk to this pretty well too. It was kind of quicker than most people. I raced quarter midgets from the time I was 5 till I was 11. And there's different classes in there, and the carts get faster and faster and faster. And those little go-karts, they're running really fast. By the time you're 11, I mean, it's all you can do to hang on. They're so fast. You run, 6-second lap time. So it's a little small racetrack and you're just zipping around there. And so for me, I went straight from that to a full-size race car called a late model, which is basically a stock car. Looks similar to what you see us race on Sundays. And I started racing those when I was 11. And that's a big step. That's a bigger step than I would say most kids take. You go straight from, hey, these are my buddies, I've grown up racing them, to, okay, here's this 40-year-old man that I'm racing, and he has to finish well to be able to race next week. And it's going to help him put food on his table to finish well. And so it's definitely like a big jump. I remember my first race in a late model, I bumped this guy in an accident, and he was, really mad at me. He didn't know who I was or how young I was. And he came down and was cussing and yelling at me. And I got out of my car, and at the time I was like 5'1", right? I was a little kid. And he just walked and went the other way. But it's such an interesting jump from like, this is fun, to, okay, these guys are serious now. And I'd say that most kids have steps in between that, but that was kind of how I did.
Yeah. I feel like I need to ask, because I'm curious, what is it? Obviously, when you're 11 years old, you don't have a driver's license. That's like not a thing. What does that look like? And then when you got your driver's license, were you, let me just show you a few YouTube videos and we can be good and I can just get my license? Or what does that look like?
Yeah. Imagine my nephews listening to this and going, listen up, this is how we're going to get our licenses.
Right.
This is it right here.
Exactly. No, I didn't. There was no early license for me. I had to get my mom or my dad to drive me to the racetrack so I could go drive a race car, and then would hit in the back seat and they would drive me home.
So good.
That's certainly a interesting concept. And then I had, and I don't know how it is in different states and whatnot, but in North Carolina, you have to get hours with a co-driver to get your full license. And this guy that I drove around, or, drove him around for a while. He just fell asleep. You're good. I'm going to take a nap. And so I drove him around for like 2 hours with this dude I didn't know, just sleeping in the passenger seat. So
your mom did that?
Oh, no. No, it was a guy from you have
don't
to get
names.
hours.
Don't say names.
No, I'm not saying names. But it's like a guy you have to get hours with, that's outside of your parents. So that was an interesting scenario for sure. I don't want to get him in trouble, so no names.
No, that's completely fair. And I think, Jeff, to you, I mean, were you also a co-driver? I mean, I know the laws differ from state to state. Myself, like, I had to drive with my parents, like a parent or guardian or person, like in the car, to get a certain number of hours before I could take my driver's test. You guys mentioned safety. I mean, Harrison, you mentioned it as a perspective of football, no, but racing, yes, for sure. I imagine there's some dear listeners that may, when they have this connotation in their head of racing, and especially driving at that kind of high speeds and safety. And Jeff, I wonder if you can talk to sort of the importance around that and maybe set some minds at ease, maybe my own. I don't want to say I worry for it, but it's like, if my daughter comes up to me and says, I really like driving go-karts, I really want to go after this. I feel like I need to have some words to just calm myself down, because I can imagine just my heart kind of jumping out of its chest.
Well, look, no one's claiming it to be, the safest thing you can do, for sure. Yeah. I mean, there's, you just have to weigh the risk, and you have to put young drivers in situations where, they're going to make mistakes, and they are in a safe environment. As they learn, as they make mistakes, they're going to make them. They're going to be in wrecks. They're going to be in incidences. They have to be going the speed that they're going to minimize the opportunity for damage, right, or an injury rather. And the same as football. Like you shouldn't put an 8th grader with a 12th grader, right, with different sizes and everything else. So you try to limit the exposure and you put them in opportunities that they're ready for. And it's really no different than any other sport. It has an element of danger to it. There's no doubt about it. But safety's come a long way for sure, but you can't ignore it. You can't ignore the opportunity is there. You have to educate yourself, and you really pay attention to the rules and pay attention to the manufacturer of the products, the safety products. They have very clear instructions on how to use their products, use them the way they say that you're supposed to use them. Yeah. And there is an element of danger in racing, as it is in any sport.
I imagine there's just a pillar of that education, though, when you're, learning the ins and outs and the finer details of racing too, that like safety is sort of like paramount. So I imagine when we think about practice in that concept, I imagine those things are drilled and repeated too. Am I right?
Well, so what Harrison talked about with quarter midgets, and Harrison can talk about it. If he was so young, he might not remember it, but there was he had to be approved. Like, he had to go through some classes. He had to do some things that before he could get on track. He had to be approved to get on track. And then anytime he raced, he had to start in the back of the pack. He wouldn't let him start in the front. Like, they walked him into it, and they had a training process that he had to go through to make sure that he was ready. Yeah. And they put experienced people together. They do a nice job, or did a nice job. I'm not involved anymore, but at that point they did a really nice job of putting, the people together that should be together and going the speeds they should be going. And when Harrison started, I mean, it looked like he was going 100 miles an hour, but he was probably going 10. It really is just putting around, barely going around there. And so it's just real important to be with a group that recognizes, and it puts your child in a safe environment, in the positions that he's ready to be in or he's not ready to be in.
Yeah. I feel like racing probably, and maybe it's because as many people aren't as intimately close to it, don't understand all the safety measures that actually go into it. They, just because they don't understand doesn't mean all these things aren't happening. We had a question too, and maybe Harrison, you can answer this one. Obviously, as part of like training and practicing, do you use like simulators or anything where you're doing a lot of stuff where you are in a safer environment where you can kind of push yourself and do some different things? So then when you're actually behind the wheel, it's not like I'm only just practicing when I'm actually out here.
Yeah, that's actually, we talk about that a lot. That's the hardest thing about racing is, if anyone can go pick up a football and throw it and try things, or say, even just to relate to fans or to people that want to watch the sport. I can watch Patrick Mahomes throw a football and I can do that. Right. So it's hard to relate that. The simulator is for us is becoming one of the biggest tools that we have to do that. Ford, I drive for Ford Performance, and they have a multi-million-dollar simulator where all the drivers circle in and out. The teams can try different things. The drivers can try different things. So, I was in there yesterday from 7 a.m. till 11. It's kind of my shift every week. That's part of my job now is I go in to the simulator. I help them tune it to be more realistic. We go through different things that the crew chief might want to try for the car for the upcoming race. I give them my feedback on that. And it's crazy. The simulator is so realistic now that I can feel, okay, they changed the right front shock. I can feel how the car pitch changed. I can feel if it's giving more grip for the front end of the car. I mean, it's pretty unreal how far that has come. And the reason for that is, like you said, it's a safe place to do it. You can try stuff. It's expensive to wreck things. It hurts to wreck things. You don't want to do that. So it's like freedom for all these engineers that have all these ideas. You can just go in there and type it in, see what happens. And if I bounce it off the wall, I'm going to be fine. And we'll hit the reset button and go again. So for us, that is becoming, and it was at the tail end of my dad's career, it was kind of just starting. And now for me, that's a mainstay in almost every single race team is simulator time through whatever manufacturer helps them out.
Yeah, I've seen too, and maybe it's because, and I don't know maybe I'm going to speak here, then you guys are going to be, yeah, we don't like F1, but I've watched the F1 documentary. Yeah. Okay, there's no bad blood there. I had no idea.
I
didn't know if it was like
a
live PGA Tour kind of thing going on.
I just love racing, so it's easy to watch.
Okay, so anyways, I've seen, obviously that's exploded in popularity, probably in large part to the documentary, but I've also seen that from that, to get more fans engaged, they're creating like places you can go. I think the first one's in Boston, where you go and there's just simulators everywhere. Yeah. And so that's kind of I'm sure it's cool for you guys to have fans be able to maybe relate a little bit more and understand the sport more. And it's obviously just going to help it grow and grow more, but maybe we'll have to do a field trip, Simon, and give that a go.
Yeah.
I think I'll be horrible, but.
Oh yeah, same. There's no way that I'm going to be great at it right away.
The interesting thing, like the simulator Harrison's talking about that he does with Ford, it's full motion. So
that's crazy.
It's, not only is it visual, it's motion, which is really the key. Like really the key for a race car driver, to drive a race car, you have to operate on the edge of grip. And on the other edge of that is the wreck. And so you've got to find that very edge of where the car is going to leave the racetrack spinning out or going into the wall. That's where the speed is. That's where the danger is. That's where the speed is. And so having that ability to operate right on that edge of the grip without crossing over it, that's how you make lap time and that's how you go fast. That's a feel thing. It's like you feel the car start to grip. Yeah. You sense that before it starts to lose grip. And the simulator, like iRacing, which is awesome, the graphics and visuals are amazing, but it doesn't give you the feel. But what it does do is does show fans and it's very easy to get onto, and it does show fans what it feels like and what it looks like and the situations the drivers get themselves in, and the adrenaline rush of I got 2 laps to pass this guy, all that kind of stuff. And it's been really good for our sport because it exposes fans to that. It doesn't expose them to the danger, right? And like Harrison said, that's one of the hardest things that when I do it for a living, one of the hardest things to do is to explain what a driver is feeling, not what he's seeing, but what he's feeling. Because you can see what he's seeing. We have great cameras in the cars, on the helmets. What we don't have is a way to feel. It's like an MMA fight. Like you might think you can do it till one of them kicks you in the shin. Like then you realize, no, I don't want to do this.
This is not for me.
Correct. It's a lot like that. And it's something that you can go to the YMCA and get into a basketball game. Yeah. And you can do that with soccer. You can do that with baseball. You can do that with football. You can't do that in racing. And it's very hard to do with fighting also. So they're just 2 sports that are very difficult to explain what it feels like to be in that race car or in the ring.
I'm curious about that, about being able to, the idea of teaching that. And I wonder, Jeff, if you can speak to, being a parent and watching Harrison go through this, how I'm sure you were involved. I guess, was there a point where you were the coach, or were you potentially overstepping what the coach was trying to coach Harrison do?
Well, I never overstepped.
Okay.
Oh yeah.
I have to ask the question.
Let's get that on the records.
I just have to ask.
We got to get that on the records.
I can explain this perfectly if you want, but I'll let him go.
There's one way to learn, right? And that's do it. And there is a way to prepare. And they're 2 different things, right? So you can prepare, and Harrison and I could talk a lot about and watch video and talk about the things that he is going to experience, the things that he needs to do, the thing he's not doing well.
Yeah.
It's a whole nother thing to actually go out and execute on it. And so that's when he just had to go do it, and he had to experience some things. And we knew there was going to be then, and there's going to be in the future, times that he doesn't know that he's doing something wrong or that he needs to be better. And that's just how it is. Every athlete is like that. And so as he's gotten older and has as many races under his belt and as many experiences as he has under his belt, now I'm like a 30,000 foot view guy. I'm the guy that just, when I see something, not necessarily that he's doing, but more of an approach then I'll step in and say, hey, what about, think about this. But we don't talk about hands and feet and steering wheel, and we don't talk about that. We don't talk about those kind of things. It's more, I've been there from an emotional standpoint. I've been there. I've experienced things that I know he's going to experience. And a lot of those things aren't good. Like you think about this, if a NASCAR Cup team wins 4 races, that is an amazing year.
Yeah.
Now think about that. If a football team wins 4 games, they're terrible.
Yes, I can attest.
And so it's a lot like golf in that there are a lot of people in the field, and you can have a really good day and finish 10th, like a really good day and finish 10th. Yeah. You can run well and finish 20th. It is so competitive. And so that is, golf and racing are very much alike in that. And you just can't always look at the scoreboard and say, this is the day I had. It's more complicated than that. And trying to help Harrison navigate through those challenges of what it's like to be a Cup driver, because it is much harder than people recognize. It is exceptionally hard. Yeah. And it's the same thing, if I'm an unskilled viewer, I love sports, but I'm unskilled. I can watch a college football game, and it really doesn't look that different to me from a pro football game. But if I put 5 pro players on that college field, I would do, now I see, right? Now I understand. Yeah. And it's a lot like that in racing. Like when you put all the Cup guys in the field, they look like the same as the truck race. But when you take some truck guys and put them in the Cup race, you do, now I understand. That's how good the Cup guys are. So it's just very hard until you've experienced it to understand it. Harrison got a taste of it last year. And so I'm trying to help in that regard. But when he was a developing driver and can I do this or can I not do this, I was much more hands-on, much more hands-on. But at the same token, I was still racing too. So there were times, most of the races that Harrison ran, especially quarter midgets, I wasn't there. Now, we worked on Tuesdays and Wednesdays and Thursdays, but on Saturdays and Fridays, it was he and his mom.
Oh. Got it. I think it's, I've heard, and you mentioned golf. I feel like I've heard a lot of times after a major, they'll say the thing where there should be an amateur out there so you can really see, because I think golf is, you were spot on, is another one where it's can't be that hard. And people who golf are very hard. I feel like you probably couldn't achieve that in NASCAR. It would probably